Okay, a little note for my athletes out there, even you weekend warriors. Uh, when it comes to carbing up, you got a race, you got an event, you got a hard lift. People think they need carbs, they need to carb up, right? They need to be prepared for the activity. And there's a certain element of truth to that, but I want to explain a little bit further what that really means. So your body can store, let's say 300 to 400 grams of carbs / glucose, which is just carbs in the body for simpler terms, on itself. So your liver stores about 100. Your muscles can store, 200 to 400, depending on how muscular you are, how big you are, right? And most of us do not really deplete our carbohydrate stores in our body, our glucose, glycogen stores in our body. So even a hard training session for me, lifting, right? If I watch my heart rate and I'm only in, zone 4, zone 5 for very, very, very small chunks, if at all, in a training session like that. So my body is mostly running off fat. I'm not really utilizing carbs for energy. Now, if you're in a hard running session or a hard cycling session or something like that, and you're in that, zone 4, zone 5, I kind of refer to them as yellow and red, then you are using a lot of carbohydrates, and therefore you do need to replenish that. But a lot of lifters think they need a lot of carbs, and they don't really, because you're not tapping into that resource that often for that kind of work. Now, if you're doing 20 rep sets on legs and a ton of sled work and like high intensity assault bike stuff like that, absolutely, yeah, you're going to deplete some of that. But even if you do the math on what you might deplete in 10 minutes of yellow and red on a lifting session, you're talking about 50 grams of carbs. We're not talking about a whole lot. So carb loading from a lifting standpoint is rarely that relevant. But from a cardiovascular standpoint, it can be very relevant. It can be very important. And the idea of carbing up does make sense if you are genuinely depleted, but most people are not. And if you're training hard all week and you look at your training and you look at your heart rate and you're mostly, 60, 70% of your max, you're still utilizing fat a lot more for energy than you are carbs. So you don't have that much to replenish. But if it's race day or you're doing a hard training and you do notice, you're in 80% or more for an hour, all right, now we're talking about something totally different. Now you're really burning a lot of carbohydrates and you do actually need to replenish that. So if you just monitor your heart rate throughout your course of your training, you can determine that much easier and see what does your body truly need. And then another misnomer that happens sometimes is people say they need to carb up and then they go eat, pizza, or they go eat a big steak dinner or something that doesn't actually have a lot of carbs. They might think it has. Even pasta, if you just have a cup of pasta but then a ton of sauce and stuff, it's not that many carbs. So, pasta is a good one, rice is a good one, potatoes are good ones, what everybody tolerates well. If you do need to replenish that, and then you can get into more detail on whether you need slow or fast carbs. If you're carb loading beforehand, you want more slow carbohydrates. You want that lower glycemic stuff because you want to store it. You want it to stay stable in your body. If you're eating really, really high glycemic index foods, your insulin is going to clear that out fast. You're going to store more of that as fat, and that's not as effective. That's why when you see people doing actual races, when they are burning through their carbs genuinely in real time, quickly, right? They're working really, 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 really hard. Think Tour de France, right? Those guys are in the 80, 90% heart rate all the time. So they need a ton of carbs because they are burning through that limited 400 grams of carbs they have on their body every hour. So they got to put that back in, put that back in, put that back in. That's when you want faster carbohydrates because you are more insulin sensitive because your body's needing it right at that time. And that's where you see a lot of the, Gatorade drinks, which is why those are popular during sport activity. That's why you see the gels and the powders and the stuff that gets in your system really, really quickly because your body can absorb it right away. So when you're thinking about exercise, you're thinking about doing these weekend warrior things, or you have a big event, plan accordingly and really start to listen to your body and learn your body's systems and see if you really are burning a lot of carbohydrates. I think it's a mistake that people make thinking they need a lot more carbs than they actually do. And that makes it hard for them to lose weight because they're refueling something that they're not actually spending. and then you end up with a surplus. So just something to consider. I hope that made sense. If you got any further questions on that, reach out to me and I'll try to explain it a little bit better. But basically, don't eat carbs if you don't really need them.